So I had a really hard time sticking to agreements or rules when I was a kid due to my ADHD. I couldn't stay in my seat. I was constantly fidgeting, calling out, right? And this is just typical. So the first thing is we always have to look at what's driving the behavior. Why are they not able to stick to the agreement? Is it because they're seeking attention, right? They want your attention or the class attention because they're not feeling a sense of belonging? Are they like me and it's actually not a misbehavior, it's an innocent behavior? Still, how do we address it, right? Or are they feeling that they're not adequate, they're not capable to do the work, and they're doing that to avoid the work, right? We have to look at what's driving the behavior. And when we do, then we can address it from there. However, I might say to a student, I notice you're having a hard time staying in your seat. Or I notice you're having a hard time waiting for people to finish. What would help you? If a student is not regulated and they're not able to, stick to the agreements for whatever reason, they're not going to be able to learn. So we need to give them that space. And that's why, another tool that we use is a positive timeout space. So I might invite them and say, would it help you to go chill out for a little bit? When you create that timeout space, you have agreements about how the space can be used, so it doesn't get misused. So it's always about establishing together those respectful agreements in whatever situation. And I think it's important when we look at the agreements and sticking to them or not sticking to them. When they don't stick to the agreements, if they have been involved in creating them, it's like they're breaking their own agreements. They're not breaking your rules. It's like they're not sticking to their agreements. And if you constantly have the same agreement that's not able to be followed through with, well, you sit down in a class meeting and you go, hey, it's been like a month and we're still struggling with whatever it is. Let's focus on some solutions. What can we do? Does the agreement need to change? Is there something in the environment that we need to change? So it's a constant process of going back, reflecting together, brainstorming together, problem solving together, but getting them involved. Involvement equals cooperation. Those are the two things, and thinking about connection before correction. If students aren't following an agreed, guideline, then you can kind of point to the list and just say, can you see which agreement needs to be followed right now? Right? So it's not shaming. And one of the things that I used to like to do, and I love when I see teachers do this, and this is a tough one because you have to do it in a way that's not patronizing. I love to use humor in the classroom. And when you use humor, you have to have a really good connection with your students, and you have to do it appropriately. And, it can be really effective to be dramatic and use humor to model for students what it looks like when class guidelines aren't being followed. For example, if you had a classroom agreement of how you're going to enter the classroom after recess, right? Because that's always chaos. And you had an agreement that we're going to come into the classroom quickly, quietly, and safely. And you talked about what that looks like and sounds like, right? And then after recess, they'll come running in, right? And it's chaos. You might then, instead of saying, what was our agreement about how we come into the classroom, right? You might say, I want to show you what I just noticed, what I just saw. And then you just dramatically and kind of, you walk into the classroom making noise and bumping into desks and throwing your coat on the floor rather than hanging it up, and you just plop yourself into your seat, just kind of mimicking what you saw. And then you ask them, what did you see? What did you notice? And they'll laugh and they'll know what you mean, and then you say, well, what needs to happen instead? And then you point to the class agreement, how we come into the classroom.